Hello everyone. This will be more of a build analysis, and I wouldn't call this a 100% failure, but the the build sadly doesn't work how I expected it to work. It's still a viable build, and I still cleared Forge 10 easily with this, and I think this can work up until nether farming to work perfectly fine, and you will be able to clear the game with it. It's just not as smooth as I hoped for, and doesn't exactly work that the way I expected. The precise part that I don't understand why it doesn't work correctly is the mono leech. In theory, if I use this Reaper, then indirect damage will be able to leech mana and life. And I tested this and this does work, so whenever I'm putting a damage over time on something, I will get a mana leech and the life leech out from it, so I can see how that bar is increasing, so this part works. What I don't exactly understand doesn't work is that this build wants to every second fill up the entire mana bar several times a second. This is the entire idea about this build, is that I'm able to do this, but for some reason mana leech is way lower than I expected. So if I have like 30 million DPS, then with a quick calculation we can check, since all of my damage is either indirect, primary or secondary, so 100% of my damage should be able to leech mana. So if I say that I do this, then this means that even if I'm at like just 3 million DPS, which is whenever I start doing things, it's just at that level, my entire mana pool should be recovered at least 3 times a second, even in the beginning. And this doesn't happen. My mana leech is only maybe 3000 per second, maybe 4000, around that ballpark. So it takes about 10 seconds for this to leech it back to the maximum. Oh yeah, I also should add to this calculation that this should be divided by 5, because mana leech and life leech is a 5-second duration over time effect on you. So even if I say that this is divided by 10, so I'm at a way lower damage, every second I should be getting half of this back. So at worst this should be done every 2 seconds if it works as it should with my current DPS. The reason why I wanted this to work is because I found a really fun interaction that I wanted to build around with. And this is still a viable build, and I will show you how. But it cannot use life leech as this source of mana gaining utility. So there is one ability that says Arcane Bond that you can apply as a mage to anything, and elemental damage is equal to 100% of the mana you spend or lost during that second. What this means is that if you are able to spend your entire mana pool several times a second, then this can be a very, very big number. And especially if we add to this that our region can be also counted for this, and our felt elemental damage can also be counted into Arcane Bond, and that we are always doing the maximum DPS out of it as possible, then that means with another 40% increase here, that with Arcane Commander we can apply Arcane Bond very, very well. It will be a very big number if we are doing this correctly. So we want to use Arcane Clones for this, and the Arcane Missile is very good in applying this Arcane Bond if we have an obliteration orb around us, which is fairly easy to do, and we can get a few extra missiles from out of it, and we can get a bit more damage here. Okay, these are all good, and what's even more important, that Arcane Missile has no cost if I'm under 40% mana, so there won't be any point where I'm not able to cast Arcane Missiles from these clones, because these clones actually use your primary skill. So this is one of the few totems, because this counts as a totem, that will be using your primary skill, and you are spending mana with this. So this counts as a primary skill use when Arcane Missile is cast by the clones. And we can use, for example, Chronopuncture to get the orbs that we need. So we are applying this dot to anything, everything. Now comes the gloves that I found while I was looking for other builds. And this is a very interesting glove, because we don't really care about the 100% ancestral strike chance. It's good, so we are using it, but that's not the main part, but that it consumes all of our mana, which means whenever we go at 100%, we will go down to 0. So it's a game of how fast you can build back your entire mana pool to get another ancestral strike originally, but we actually want to use this depletion part of it. In theory, if I'm getting mana leech everywhere, and if I'm using this primordial stuff of relentless transference, then I should be leeching from everything, and my mana pool should shoot back up to 100 again and again constantly. The other good thing is that this stuff is very strong by itself. If you see, then there is a description in the primordial version where it says that whenever you kill an enemy with indirect damage, you get a stack and you can go up to 50. And whenever they hit you, the maximum they can hit you is 100% of your maximum life, minus how many stacks you have. This is a very good defensive mechanic by itself, but we can make this absolutely broken, and I will in another build, because this only checks your life. So if our life pool is very, very low, let's say 6,000 as it is here, then we don't really care about how many stacks we have, because this is the maximum amount that we can be hit. So if we are using Thornbite to get around 200,000 Thornbite shield on ourselves, then it almost doesn't matter how much armor or elemental resistance we have, because this will limit it to 6,000 at worst. So every damage that possibly hit us is cut off at 60k or even less, and this is a very strong defensive layer. And if we are able to get this Thornbite several times a second, then we will be immortal pretty much. We can increase Thornbite by using Indomitable Mountain and converting all of our evasion into armor, and then getting more armor and converting it to elemental resistance. As you can see, with a very low amount of investment, I only use the defensive stats and maybe 2 or 3 other stats. I have a very respectable amount of stats here that all add to this Thornbite shield number. So our defense is set, and what we can do is we can get extra projectiles, we can get an extra clone, we can get, whenever we use a skill in combat, so for example our Chronopuncture, again this specifies that we have to use it, so I don't think our clones work with this, but we can get 10% mana back every so often, which is good. And we can get extra Pierce Fork Rebound, so that's great because we have an easier time maxing them out. We can get an extra aura, which will be mattering later on. We don't care about what the aura does, it's an aura, it's good. we get +1 rank for Ancestral Gift, which is great, a bit of movement speed, and a bit of life on hit and kill. This I only put on because I don't have any regen or anything else, and if something happens that I go a bit lower here, then this will eventually move this back to 100. So it's just the very basics how I cover this type of life that I have. Okay, again we are spending mana, we are making it cheaper and increase the effect, and we have this Torn by Protection. Because the effect is increased, then this means that we're getting a lot more of this Torn by Shield that we should. So this means pretty much that we will get a lot of Torn by Shield, because this will be adding probably I'm not sure exactly how it works. My Turbine Shield is around usually 250,000, but that's because this, when they hit you, you will get extra armor, and that's why I think it happens. I think this 100% only matters for the initial trigger, so not the Torn by Protection cannot access part, but the initial 8,000 part. I'm getting more than 8,000 every time this sticks, so I think that's the thing that's actually doubled. Okay, I also wanted to use here regen originally so I can spare some mana regen. And as you see, because of this, we are not going for crit, which is the usual thing for a damage over time build, is to go for Ancestral Strike and crit to increase the damage numbers. But instead, we want to have damage over time increase everywhere, and elemental penetration and elemental damage everywhere, so that we get a big increase from these, because what we are doing is not added damage, it's elemental damage, so we can use all the multipliers that we can find for it, which means that our tree is very useful in this case, because we can get 45% here, we get 30% here, and if we have 4 auras, which we can reach with these, then we get 80% increase here. Also, we get a respectable flat elemental damage from this node, and we are getting stunning the mobs that are actually hitting us, so that way we cannot get swarmed up because they will be stunned. Also, we are blinding them, which is handy, it's just another effect, and this is how the build should work. Worth noting that this doesn't work because this reserves your mana, and if your mana is reserved, then you cannot ever reach 100%, because this doesn't say that your actual mana or your unreserved mana, your maximum mana needs to be full to this to work. So that aura won't work with it, but the light dart one does work with it. So this is our setup, and if I go in, you will be able to see that it's still a respectable damage that we can do, but the regen is simply just not there. As you can see, now we have more than enough shield to survive, and our damage is good. It's not bad, at least for this. Just to show you, I barely put epic stats everywhere. I have like 3 places where I actually put on epic stats. I have to craft the rest still. Probably I will, just to check how well this actually works in the end. But this isn't a huge investment to get this going. As you can see, our single target won't be really good, sadly, but the time lock makes it actually very comfortable to do it. Okay, let's say this one, and as you can see, the defense part works exactly as I stated, so we now semi-immortal. But as you can see, clearly the regen is not working. We are doing 20 million DPS, so as in the previous calculation showed, this should be around several times our max mana should be regened, but it doesn't. It's a very small amount. It's like 3,000 per second, as you can see. So that's sadly the problem with this build. I originally wanted to use this by itself and only use chronopuncture for the orb, but we can use chronopuncture to stack our armor to a very big number, because this can stack up loads of times, 25 times to be exact. So this is a huge armor increase that we are using. And also it applies the effect by itself, so it applies the Arcane Bond, which is great. And also the only thing what makes it this viable, so why I'm making this video, is because this can work without the gloves, because we can use chronopuncture as a spender and gainer by itself. Because of this one talent, we are able to get 100% of our current mana spent and then gain back, and both of them counts for this Arcane Bond. So this is excellent. If we hit something with Arcane Bond, which will be all things, then we are getting, as you will be seeing, if I remove this, you can see it probably better. Our max mana, we will get it several times a second. So here is the next wave. And as you can see, we are getting almost 100k a second. So this, as you can see, my damage is already higher than with using the gloves, because that's how much this mana stacking actually increases the damage. So if we put this to the endgame version, to Nether gear, then what I'm calculating is that you can increase this to a ridiculous level, because you will be able to also use critical strikes and everything else. You would be in the billions of damage with this one. So the damage would be fine, the survivor is fine, and the damage right now is good enough that you can clear the endgame boss with it. You can clear everything that you want with this. I think in the Primordial Nether there will be other builds that are more comfortable to farm it, because the way you would need to do is go to a room, put down a clone, put down another clone, hit something, and that's the exact problem, is that you need to actually hit something. Because if I show you this, here I put it up and I'm just hitting the air, then I'm not getting the regen that I want, as you can see. So my damage will be very, very low. I need to actually go in and hit the mobs, otherwise I'm not getting the increased damage. And that can work, but I think it will be not as comfortable as other builds can be in the late game. So that's why I'm thinking that this is good enough to go to the Nether with and to farm up your other gear if you want, but this playstyle is not good enough for an endgame farm, I think. As you can see, if you are on a single target mode, then your damage will be significantly lower already, so it's not great for that. If you have any information about how leech actually works, I would love to know, because I cannot find anything about this. Do I have a certain limit, like 10% of my max mana? Is the mana regen calculated differently? Is the Reaper not working as I expected? So I don't know what's happening that causes this limitation on my leech. But if you do, please tell me. Thank you. Bye.